Right, so speaking of horrible things on the internet, we're going to delve into the depths of DINKTok. And this is the new dink trend on TikTok. So we had the anti-marriage TikToks earlier in the year, and that propaganda didn't work. So now the algorithm's pushing these dual income, no kids couples who demand to be celebrated despite not contributing to anything to civilization. And if you're wondering why these are even being made, I refer to Kat D, who's a fantastic chronicler of internet trends, iron law of internet projection. So if you ever want to know why someone's posted something on the internet, you go down this order of motivations. It's either validation, then sex, then curiosity, then money, and then money before anything nefarious. However, when you start collecting all of those things together, I think the most nefarious element starts rising to the top. So it might just be that these people are seeking validation, but then the end product is a cultural standard where pushing basically depopulation is the norm. So, what?
I didn't know where this was going, but okay. I'm excited.
Well, if you make it the standard that essentially having no children as a couple is as morally equivalent and actually more financially sensible in this day and age than having children as a couple, then how do you excuse having the children in the first place? Beyond a sort of instilled sentimental want for children that a lot of the time doesn't even kick in until the biological clock's almost running out of time. So you're robbing people of the fact that they probably do want to have kids, but economic conditions are not slanting that way, and cultural incentives aren't pushing them in that direction. So not very healthy. And this constitutes a kind of consciousness-raising exercise, and if you want to learn about those, it's quite important that we learn about those, because that's how the feminist movement won. This is Carol Hanish's personalist political observation. They had all these therapy circles sitting around with women talking about their problems, and they went, oh, well, okay, but are we furthering feminism by doing this? And they said, actually, by airing our grievances, we're raising our critical consciousness, which then motivates political action. And it's kind of true. So what we need is a consciousness-raising exercise in the opposite. You need a bunch of stories saying, here are the excesses of feminism and materialistic culture to warn women against, and men as well, choosing these incentives. And so that's what Carl and I covered in here. But if we're looking at what consciousness is being raised, let's look at some of the DINKToks. These were circulating last week. I'm just going to rewind to...
The name is kind of stupid.
It is stupid.
We're dinks. We go to Trader Joe's and workout classes.
Personally.
That's probably sensible.
On the weekends.
We're dinks. We get into snobby hobbies like skiing and golfing.
We're dinks. We can go to Florida on a whim.
We're dinks. We're already planning our European vacation next year.
Dinks. We get a full 8 hours of sleep and sometimes more.
We're dinks. We get desserts and appetizers at restaurants.
We're dinks. We can play with other kids and give them back.
We're dinks. We still do it 3 times a week.
We're dinks. We spend our discretionary income on $8 lattes.
We're dinks. We max out our 401ks, Roth IRAs, and HSAs.
We're dinks. We don't use our kids or dog as an excuse to leave a party. We just leave. We're dinks. We go.
You're dicks. Sorry, it's the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah.
We're genetic dead ends.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to over-psychologize, but
Talk
I
about
am...
never growing up. I'm sorry.
Well, I am paid to do it. I mean, he looks like the picture of masculinity, doesn't he?
That's a flex.
Looks
right
like the
there.
actual Kuma Wojak. I mean, there may or may not be more to life than just endlessly consuming
Yes.
luxury items that you've been told are a status symbol, or just going on fleeting vacations and chasing novel experiences. Like, you might want to hit the next stage at some point, because I think there's only so much personal development you can do until you take on responsibilities from dependent others. I think that's actually the inflection point of where you go from child to adult, is where as a child you have positive rights. You are entitled to be protected, clothed, fed, sheltered by your parents. When you hit a stage where you can give that back, that's when you have to take on responsibilities and you have negative rights. And these people are treating it like the world owes them some kind of validation and provision of a certain kind of lifestyle despite them having no responsibilities.
Do you know, imagine the ancestors just looking at this and going, I fought saber-toothed tigers for you to now turn around and go, yeah, we're done.
Yeah.
Just completely stop the family line, family
I had
tree.
kids during the Black Death.
Yeah,
You guys
and
can't
you're-
even sacrifice your holiday to Bali. Get over it.
You're dicks.
Yeah.
I'm not too worried about this, to be honest, because we covered this a while back. We found out about dinks the first time, I think, like a year ago. And we also found sinks. You heard of sinks? Sinks are the funniest one.
Single income, no kids.
Which is a woman
Oh, no.
who thinks being an adult deserves some kind of praise. You know, like strong, independent women, where it's like,
Yeah,
man,
yeah,
I
yeah.
pay my bills. It's like, oh,
Oh, well done.
Well done, lady. It's amazing. But the reason I'm not worried is the couples we went through who were dinks, who weren't like, lunatic women. It was instead people who were like, yes, we get to play games together. We kept up with their TikToks because I wanted to see how their lives progressed. And literally all of them ended up with kids, usually through IVF because it was quite late, which is not a good idea to leave it that late. We can speak to people who sent messages about that. But it was just funny where it's like, haha, yes, this is so great. But then they all just did have kids. So I do wonder if these people are similar, where they're just having fun, but then by next year they're going to be trying.
Like, yeah,
Depends on the TikToker, I guess we look at. But
the problem is, if the culture and the economy caters to this being the norm of like two atomized individuals coming together to just share experiences until such a point where it's just no longer fun, so you can sever that.
Not ideal, is it?
Well, it's not just
better if everyone could do that in the early 20s.
Well, no. But that's not even the point. It's like that means so it's much harder to the people who actually do want to commit versus the people that are just in it for the experience. And so there are a bunch of people who are looking at this and thinking, well, I don't feel any more comforted by this. I wish I had a family by now. There's 92% of women in the UK say they want kids if they haven't already got them. And there's a record over 50% that have reached 30 without having had those kids. And so this messaging is profoundly unhelpful to set as the cultural supposition, because what the world on their doorstep is telling them they should want is completely at odds with what they want inside. And so they're repressing that. And so you're going to have a sort of whole population of really miserable people trying to buy into a lie. Like, how do you continue a civilization like that if they genuinely feel miserable every day? It's quite worrying, really. I mean, I'm not worried about these idiots, but I'm worried about the people that are buying it when they don't want to. So always rely on Jesse Lee Peterson to have a fun take.
Oh, really?
Just replace dinks with dumb. We're dumb. We're going to participate in destroying ourselves. Now, the reason he raises this is because of a quite real demographic point, and that is the dinks are manufacturing consent for mass migration. Because if we have sub-replacement birth rates, but we have an entire government going, think of the GDP and labour force participation, then if the people at home aren't having babies, then they've just got to battery farm Africans ad infinitum to make up the loss and to pay for the pensions. And so actually, the dinks are having a knock-on effect to demographic and immigration policies that are making us all really miserable and not being able to afford a house.
You are right, I'll make it worse. To be fair, that's been going on since the 2000s.
Yes.
It's even before all of this. But
the birth rate's been dropping since the 70s.
Sure. But I do think it would be great if we could just orchestrate that this is actually worse off. So, for example, if you get married and then have a kid, what is the statistics on this? Like, it's rock solid that if you do that, there's a 90% chance you won't live in poverty. Whereas if you get it in the wrong order, there's like a 60% chance you'll end up in poverty. It's one of the best pieces of advice you can for wealth building. If we can just make that part of the tax code,
yes.
You get married and then have kids, your kid is not a bastard, well, therefore you get 50% off your income tax for the rest of your life. Yes. So then being a dink actually costs, which then means that there's no civilizational cost.
That's the best. That is so good. If you incentivize marriage again, and if you incentivize having children again through tax breaks, through any means necessary now, this will become
the camps.
Yeah, no, not like that. No, we're not going to go that far. Obviously, right? Breeding camps, like Handmaid's Tale. Like,
do you know you will have the sex?
Didn't mean it like that. That came out. Well, yeah, you're right. It would make this just
picking up on that.
Out.
So I've got an interview coming out tomorrow with the authors of the ARC report on the demographic trilemma, and Philip Pilkington, one of the authors on it, turned around and said, looking at Hungary, who have done that, you never have to pay income tax again if you're a woman who has over 4 children. That marriage and child incentive has done a slight uptick in the birth rate. Okay, you might say short-term trend, but something that's undeniable, marriage rates have doubled since implementing that, and they've made divorce much harder as well, and divorce rates have dropped. So that means that people are getting a start on building their families earlier, and those are the kind of families that actually self-report to wanting. So, yeah, very encouraging. The problem is that the mindset of the dink is the exact same mindset of the policymakers at the moment. Because they don't want to create that family-centric tax break, because they're classifying people as individual consumer units. And so the only way that they can conceptualize a family-friendly policy isn't tax breaks so the mum can stay at home and have more kids. It's we're going to subsidize childcare so that we're paying someone else to take care of your kids. There's more money on the changing hands, and there's more registration on the economic balance sheet, etc., etc. Very annoying. So if you didn't think it could be that bad, right? Okay. Thinks is bad enough. The thrupples have entered the chat.
Oh, no. Oh,
We're a
no.
thruple, and no, we're not looking for a fourth.
We're a thruple. It's impossible to pick what to eat or watch.
We're a thruple. We block the sidewalk when we hold hands.
We're a thruple. One bathroom just ain't gonna cut it.
We're a thruple. We've mastered the art of sharing everything.
We're a thruple. Our group chats are next level epic.
We're a thruple. We've got more dates than a calendar.
Right. So when the American Christian conservatives were called scaremongers for saying that if you codify in law the redefinition of marriage as just anyone who loves each other, you're going to completely obliterate the gender norms.
We're not legalizing polygamy. Don't worry about it.
But you did though. And the point,
Maybe you're right. The state enforced breeding camps.
I didn't advocate for that. I'm just going to make that clear down the barrel. I do not advocate.
this is the Motte and Bailey
breeding
position in real
camps.
time.
Vote Lewis for more breeding camps.
No.
It's hooked up to a milking machine. Anyway, point being, look, the reason marriage is purposeful, and this is something that, other than the mention of no kids, never entered the equation, is marriage is not for the husband and the wife. It's for the kids. It's meant to create a stable foundation in which they can be raised. This is why the stability keeps all parties out of poverty. It's why single mother-raised men and women are more likely to be promiscuous, be single mothers themselves, get addicted to drugs and alcohol, go to prison, and the like. That instability wrecks a person's life. And so, if you make it so that actually the roles in a marriage are just interchangeable, it doesn't matter whether a man or woman's there or not, and we don't have any obligations to create and raise kids in the healthiest environment possible, then you end up with this. You end up with 5 people and a horse in a bedroom or something.
Can we talk about just how awful social media is for a minute?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Because you notice like all of these videos are like the same. What would you call it? Like the arrogance of the people involved. I mean, I was looking at a thread the other day, and in it there was basically just a bunch of videos of women, and they were just being the worst. Like there was one woman from Ukraine who was dancing and showing off her ass next to the graveyard of her Ukrainian husband who just died in war, and that was her TikTok for the day. And it's just like, what social media do, I mean, I don't know if these people were always like this and they were in society, but social media at least shows us them, if not amplifies them being awful for, views. Like, I do wonder if some of that is bleeding into this as well. People showing off, oh, look, we have, double income, no kids. It's like normal people don't.
No, they don't do
Your neighbors don't do that.
No.
But they won't do it on social media.
But the profit incentive and the validation incentive of social media
Yes.
encourages certain people to
Do
promote,
silly things.
well, not just silly things, promote their extremist lifestyle seeking validation. And so, if it encourages that, it builds a critical mass of people seeking that validation, then money, then sex, etc. As Kat says.
It's a domino effect. as
Well, exactly, yeah. When you build it in aggregate, it creates a cultural consciousness that then says,
Correct.
okay, this must be the norm, and I must play into this incentive if I want to get ahead. And so the dink becomes normal, just like feminism raised the critical consciousness of the girl boss, and girls thought, okay, I must become a girl boss to get ahead in the corporate ladder. Oh my God, I've hit my 30s and I've got no kids.
Sorry to interrupt the video, but I thought I'd announce that we have a new line of merch. This is our aesthetics collection. So I was thinking that in the face of AI art debasing the very concept of art, actually we'd do something quite positive. So we commissioned a series of paintings that were actually really beautiful and could be something that we could present outside of politics. So for example, we have this magnificent painting of a ship weathering a storm, which I thought was just really nice. And we have, of course, a glorious, sort of surrealist, giant white tiger drinking from a lake. But also there are other things that are just kind of interesting, such as the chap lost in cyberspace, or something that I thought might, in time for Christmas, make a great present for your mum or something like that, a beautiful cat lounging on some clouds. Basically, we wanted to do some stuff that wasn't just political, so things that were just nice and beautiful and interesting, because that's also a part of the world we want to curate. So you can go over to shop.lotuses.com. Buying the merch is a really great way of supporting us and means that we can live past demonetization. And I'm sure they make great gifts for the folks as well.
And this is an account that we'll come on to slightly later. I did just want to go on to Zero HP Lovecraft, one of my favorite Anon accounts, who just raises a perfect point. Weird Dink's video memes are so repellent, they're effectively natalist propaganda, which is true, but for half the population, right? There's certain people that, the kinds that won't go onto the replica AI girlfriends stuff, they'll go, okay, I'm turning my phone off, I'm muting all my accounts, I don't want to see a Ukrainian OnlyFans girl dancing next to a grave, block, I'm going to have my own kids. And there's going to be a bunch of people that actually buy into the lie and then don't have them when they really want them and it's too late, and they become a really resentful constituency voting for, I don't know, the government to subsidize their old age by bringing in every Tom, Dick, and Abdul from overseas forever. So you're fighting against two populations here. This is why we need to change the culture. And something that might change the culture are the accounts of things going wrong. So we've got articles like this for quite a while that have been the mainstream cultural messaging, saying that, okay, women who don't have children should be just as valued as the women that do. Now, in all fairness to this author, she does say the decision to have children wasn't hers because she got married in her late 20s, she had fertility problems in her 30s, and she's just since given up. But then she went on to own a large chain of department stores and said that she feels frustrated that the government doesn't subsidize non-mothers taking the same time off as mothers at the Christmas period because I feel stigmatized and I have to cover their shifts. And it's like, lady, the economy is not set up around you being an individual consumer. Well, it currently is, but it shouldn't be. It should be set up for continuing the civilization by having children.
What? No, mums don't get extra paid leave.
They do get 6 months guaranteed and also 6 months unpaid.
What?
There's maternity leave in this.
Oh, sorry, maternity. I thought you meant if you've had a kid and he's like 12, you get an extra 28 days.
Oh, she's also she's also complaining that
okay.
they get priority in the holiday booking because they've got to take the time off at Christmas to take care of the kids. Like by default, employers will give mothers Christmas off.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Okay.
just as a social arrangement.
I thought she was whining. It was like, I work at Asda. For some reason, they're giving an extra 20 days to mums or something.
Well, she said, I've worked flat out since Black Friday, and I began the 40-minute walk home to my home in Kent, which I share with my partner Dave, and exhaustion overwhelmed me. It was gone 7 when I eventually got in, and a glass of Sauvignon, and went straight to bed. So the typical wine mum. As anyone who's worked in a shop in December will know, it's very hard, but there's a reason it's been particularly unrelenting for me. I don't have children, and there's an expectation that women like me will pick up the slack so that mums can have time off for their families. Oh, the horror. People that have absolutely no one depending on them does a job so that the people who have children depending on them take care of the children. It's almost like society should be set up that way.
That was as bad either. I mean, I've got a very capitalist mindset coming to this, but if I'm that person, I'm just like, fantastic. I can get extra pay on Christmas, double rates or whatever else. I'll take the night shifts. Gimme. I don't know. That's why I used to see Christmas when I was someone who didn't have anyone relying on you and no family to go hang out with.
Yeah. She doesn't see it that way. And again, I want to reiterate, even though it wasn't her choice not to have kids, she does then make the equivocation between people that couldn't have kids because of fertility problems and people who have chosen to be that awful phrase, child-free, conceptualizing children as somehow a burden on your autonomy. Like, yeah, it does limit your autonomy. You can't go out and just go to Bali on a whim. But there are things that might matter more in life than just consuming. Like Stella Creasy put out a tweet the other day saying that, this is the motherhood penalty because I can't go out and do whatever I want. It's like, wow, I'm sure your kids would be really grateful growing up and reading mum calling me a penalty on social media for all of her constituents to see forever. But anyway, so no one should be falling for this. And instead, I propose that we amplify the voices that are the excesses of following this maladaptive cultural trend to combat the critical consciousness that sold men and women a lie and kept them having their loneliness monetized by things like dating apps or expensive coffees. And so I stumbled across this article from the New York Post. And this woman, Melissa Persling, she wrote an article for Business Insider a little while ago, and it was titled, I'm 38, single, and recently realized I want a child. I'm terrified and I've missed my opportunity. And it went viral. And so she did an interview with Fox News. And so these are the details of her life, and I thought I'd just share them. When Persling was 22, she married a traditional man and moved to a rural community in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I probably mispronounced that. I'm sorry to the American viewers, where she grew up. He wanted a simple life with children and home-cooked meals. But Persling, despite coming from a religious Christian background, we'll get onto that in a moment, made it clear to her husband-to-be that she didn't want children. At that time, I felt strongly I didn't want children, that I was going to be like a traditional housewife. Wasn't going to be like a traditional housewife. I knew I wanted to pursue a career, and I felt very strongly that would never change. I guess I was wrong. Persling said both her and her ex thought that love could conquer everything, but after 10 years, it was clear their differences in life goals were irreconcilable. Persling said she became resentful when he would ask for dinner or for his laundry to be done. I mean, if he is working all day, you're meant to do your share of the chores because you're meant to be a partnership. Well, that kind of resentment does really eat away at a relationship. Don't think transactionally, people. I did little to hide my disdain for our small town life. He was a good and hard-working man, but I don't think I made him feel that way, she said. At 30, Persling and her ex divorced, and she swore off the idea of marriage. Quote, I told my friends and family I'd never get married again. I needed independence, a fulfilling career, and space to chart my own course. And I didn't think marriage fit into that vision. I was content to look forward to a future without husband, children, or the trappings of a traditional life. But as she grew older, the fun, carefree lifestyle, being wined, dined, going to parties, began to go old. The pursuit of comfort and self became dull, she said. When she turned 38, terror took over. I was panic-stricken. I thought I'm going to be alone forever. It really scared me. I almost wrote the Business Insider article as a sort of warning to other women. I don't want people to miss out on the important things in life because they're just enjoying themselves, because I don't think that's ever going to really make you happy. Now, she then attributes this to both her parents' divorce, giving her the wrong relationship model. I mean, that's quite a high number now. In the UK, it's, especially in London, it's about 50% of kids that are raised with their dad outside the home and they scarcely or never see him. So that's pretty difficult to model a healthy relationship on for lots of people. But then she also attributes it to cultural brainwashing. She said she never considered herself a feminist. She attributed feminism in part as the reason she thought negatively about marriage. Quote, I feel unbelievably betrayed by feminism, and I don't want to put it on the movement entirely because I believe you make your own choices, but I was constantly fed this idea that women do everything. We don't really need men. I want to go back to some of those teachers and coaches and say, what do you mean by that? Because we can't do it all. I don't care if I never put on heels or go to a fancy dinner again. That stuff doesn't matter. I promise you, young women, it will never make you happy. And so this is the point I wanted to hammer home. It's the raising of the consciousness to the fact that you can't have it all, and the Sex and City lifestyle does actually have downsides, that if you leave it too late, IVF has ethical complications, but it also is very expensive and often doesn't work. Egg freezing is often a tragedy. And so you'll end up with women like this who felt that they were sold a lie, who made the wrong choice and have now left it too late. And I think that's the underside of this. While we can sit there and mock the dink TikToks as being ridiculous and contemptible, and all of the beta males in them looking ugly, there's also the underside that isn't just pure schadenfreude on our part. It's that there's a lot of sympathy to be had to people that are kind of NPCs following trends and that have left it too late. And hopefully by raising these kinds of stories, we can talk people out of that bleak future.
All you just have to ask is, what do you value more, short-term fun or long-term value? That's all you have to ask. And the problem, obviously, with all of this is very self-evident. You know, short-term fun doesn't equate to the long-term value of having children, a family, building an empire with a husband, etc., and vice versa.
I mean, the point of
empire, you like that one?
Yep. Camps and empire. The point.
No.
The point that you raised via IVF though links into that, and the reason people think expediently is because they think there's always going to be.
Sorry.
It's all right. I think there's always going to be some new fix down the road that can make up and escape the consequences of their actions. Like, oh, I left it too late to have kids. It's fine. I can just extra gestate a baby or have a surrogate or pursue IVF and it's going to work, right?
Yep.
And they're being sold that lie. And if Stephen Shaw's numbers of 800 million people by 2050 who wanted kids but never had them come to pass, you're going to have a lot of resentful and bitter and upset people in these countries. And you're not going to like the policies and culture that comes as a result. So go have kids, I suppose.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed watching that segment from Podcast of the Lotus Eaters, which of course you did, why don't you check out this, which is Bo's latest epochs on Richard the Lionheart, and he's now got to the Crusades, which was probably a good thing, wasn't it? Anyway, you can find out more on lotuseaters.com, where you can follow us for free, and you could also give us some money if you wanted to.